I'm on a quest to uncover the secrets to the perfect SaaS website. In each episode, I talk with product marketing professionals, sharing their hot takes on the future of B2B websites, as well as tactical breakdowns on how to better understand your customers and activate buyers faster. Today, I'm joined by Alex Gamelgard, a product marketer for over 13 years, working at companies like ActiveCampaign and Twilio. We discuss the jobs to be done framework, what makes it different in comparison to conventional personas, mistakes to avoid, and how you can use AI to move faster. So, Alex, in your own words, tell me a bit about what you think, or how do you define jobs to be done? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, really, any jobs to be done, personas, it's just a framework for understanding, who it is you're trying to get in front of and what do they care about. So, I think it's not something that you need to be extremely rigid about. But, if I were to define, when I think of personas, I think that can be a little bit more of a sort of like psychographic profile. A lot of B2C companies use them, obviously. And in a lot of cases, that's not as necessary for B2B. So I think, jobs to be done is looking at, what are people hiring your company to do? Basically, what jobs are you completing with your product? It's a little bit more bare bones brass tacks, but I think in terms of getting to core, what is the value of this product? I think it's a helpful framework of just looking at literally what are they hiring you to do. And then I think personas can kind of go over the top of it of, is this person, what are these other things that we want to add to it? So those are kind of just at a super high level how I think about it.
Yeah, the word, the kind of buzzword I've been using recently, because I've just found myself doing a lot of messaging recently, is the word functional. Is like practical, functional. You can kind of describe it however you want, but like, how are people going to use this product? Like, what are they using it for? And yeah, I find like when you think through that lens, it almost becomes crazy for you to, be talking about high level business outcomes all the time, because in most cases, that's not like the functional reason why somebody's using your product, particularly if it's like, an internal champion or end user. You talked to about layering on the sort of personas over the top. Like, where do you think these two sort of connect, like the jobs to be done and the sort of traditional personas?
I mean, I think in marketing, it's as marketing moves across the full funnel, we're responsible everything from top of funnel all the way down to conversions, customer referrals, testimonials. So really you have to be looking at everything. I think the top of your funnel, maybe you're looking more at some of these buyer personas. So, that is where I think you get into more of the, why am I buying marketing automation? Why am I looking at it kind of high level buyer goals? And then as you go through the funnel, you're going to start bringing in some of these people that are actually using the product that really need to understand it like a brass tacks level, as you said, functionally. What are we doing with it? So then you're starting to get into, okay, how am I communicating what jobs are actually going to be solved and done with this? So it ends up blending, high level value all the way down to in the weeds of what am I actually using this for? And I think it's important to look at both because, what I found in some companies, those two things don't actually match when you get down to it. Maybe you're selling, that's a really common problem people have. You're selling this story. And then when you get down, and maybe you're in marketing not actually paying attention to what users are doing. And I've found a lot of times this can be where people fall off after a demo, or maybe people buy the product and then don't actually start using it. It's because you were so focused on the high level business story and kind of the high level value of the product, but overlooked what functionality does this product actually provide, and are those two things aligned?
Yeah. Another thing, um, I've because I feel like, yeah, again, I've just been in the weeds with messaging recently. What I like about jobs to be done is the situational element of it. I think situations and triggers are, for me personally, how you take like your targeting, your customer targeting, or whether you're building like an ICP to the next level of, that everyone's looking at the sort of firmographics, psychographics, demographics, but like, what's the actual situation that would motivate somebody to look for a solution? What's that unique thing that's happening? I think that just that when it comes to mapping that to your messaging, I just feel like it just makes everything so much more like potent, like and relevant. It's like, okay, when are we going to be at the top of the priority list rather than like, halfway down or at the bottom? I think if you're able to understand the situational aspects or those triggers that, um, motivate somebody to move in market or look for a solution, then I think that's where you end up with like really, really targeted messaging, which I think traditional personas sometimes miss.
I agree with that. And also, I think it's a good case for why you can't just set and forget your personas and, in jobs to be done research, because, I mean, to your point, the climate is changing constantly. I think about tech over the last couple of years, 2021, digital transformation was everywhere. Everybody was moving online. Now I would say we're in sort of a, a weird constrictive climate that's very different than what it was before. So people are really focused on cost savings consolidation. So, whereas a couple of years ago, if I'm in, for example, marketing automation, there's a 8,000, 10,000 players in MarTech, and maybe I'm buying all of them and I've got the situations right where I'm willing to spend money to solve that niche problem with this niche thing. Now, fast forward, I'm in a situation where I need to solve the same problems, but the way I have to solve them and the compelling events are going to be much different because I'm focused on, like, good Lord, let me keep the tools I have. I'm not focused on buying new things. So maybe a consolidation or, cost story is going to be more resonant versus, growth and enthusiasm a couple of years ago. So you really do kind of need to constantly be thinking about, to your point, how are current events and the climate changing those things.
Mm-hmm. Nice, I like it. So I know you had like a perspective on bringing AI into the picture. Of course, the hot topic of probably the decade. How are you using AI, if at all, like throughout the this sort of research process?
So I think AI is a great tool for hypothesis generation and a great tool for validation. And actually, let me maybe not validation, but AI is a great tool for finding deficiencies in the work you've done. I think people who are using it to outsource critical thinking and kind of getting to the heart of it are making a big mistake. The same people that are kind of right, you're not going to write your best piece with it. But, what you can do with AI. So, I'll give an example. At Ikigai, we were doing just that. Our product is essentially patented large graphical models out of MIT, very brand new. They can do a million things. We know that it's some combination of IT, engineering, operational business leaders that are kind of solving a specific problem with AI, but that's as far as we know. So, we're able to kind of use AI to describe some of these and, hey, what job titles, what things do you think that this might be related to? And then from there, you need to go out and validate, right? So it'll give you a really generic kind of way to get started, and maybe some starter questions to ask, but then, you need to go sleuth it out. And then at the end, what I like to do is when you have a really defined set of jobs to be done, set of personas, I actually like to keep that as a template and I put that into my AI prompt anytime I'm doing anything. And one thing that we've been doing recently is looking at like website effectiveness. So if you have this really defined set of, jobs to be done, understanding of, what are their hopes and dreams, what are their barriers to buy, what decision criteria matters to them, what are they trying to do this year, what climate are they operating in, you can go pull a website, screenshot the whole thing and go to a prompt and say, hey, I'm a website conversion person and I'm trying to understand how effectively does this speak to all of these points, what's missing, what's particularly effective, and, give me your best objections as this persona. So once I have the persona documented out, I mean, you could chat with it at any point in time to kind of evaluate how what you're doing is working. So those are the two places that I probably use it the most. Other things I might do could be, asking it to generate some sample quotes to kind of get an idea of voice. Uh, but I think kind of hypothesis development and uh, using it as a prompt later are really the best places that I've found to use it.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. Again, can't outsource critical thinking, but it can get a project off the ground. Especially sometimes when there's a lot of mental work that goes into like getting a project up and running. I think it can help with that. And in the context of content, I think it's helpful for that, but not to write the content itself. Just get the creative juices flowing. And then, yeah, like I kind of refer to it as the sort of sparring partner. Like, hey, I've done all this. Like, I have all of these inputs. Like, what do you think about these inputs? Here are some assumptions I have. What do you think about that? I think it's quite useful for that as well.
I
Um,
love that. And also, one thing I'll say is, AI, like I use Claude, that's my favorite model. But it's so deferential and it's so positive that I feel like sometimes I prompt it like play devil's advocate, pretend, pretend you're trying, you be like, you have to kind of encourage it sometimes to be a little combative because its tendency is to say, that was great. This is all the things you did right. So, I think sometimes if you really want that harsh feedback, you have to specifically ask for it, but sometimes, in like maybe saying, what's something my competitors, how am I leaving myself open to this competitor with this messaging? And kind of asking those pointed questions to really get in there. And I mean, I think that's fun anyway, but it tends to give you more uh, really useful information.
no, I like that. Yeah, I think sometimes it's just trying to get the job done. It's just trying to give you a response, do its job. Um, and and so it's not really challenging any of your assumptions. I have found that I'm not sure if you've tried it, had a chance to try it. ChatGPT's new model O1 has this reasoning feature. Seems to work okay. Where it will actually quote unquote think. And I've found the output from the O1 model is far better than all of the others. But when it comes to creativity, yeah, I prefer. I use Perplexity, which I think plugs into Cloud 3.5. Okay, yeah. So I think AI can definitely help, but I think when it comes to things like research, I don't know. I just don't think there's any avoid in the hard work, which is speaking with customers, going out there and rolling up your sleeves. But I think it can um, make you more efficient in some ways. What do you think are or what mistakes have you seen people make, whether it be like product marketers or people just conducting job to be done research?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, there's so many. I'll start with kind of, when you mentioned the research piece, because I think that's one area where, there's three groups you can do research with. One is your existing customers. And I think that's important to understand what people are actually doing with the product, uncover maybe interesting use cases, opportunities to include something in your top level messaging that maybe, you know, your product managers might not know they're doing with the product. Customers will always find strange and unusual and interesting things to do that you didn't intend with the product. That happens every single company. So I think getting their sense of how am I using this? Where am I getting the best value? What functionality, and especially what functionality do I hate? What's the highest value? What's the lowest value? That's kind of how I position it. And then you also need to talk to people in the sales funnel. And I especially like talking to recent lost deals. I think that is the single biggest value activity that you can do in product marketing is why didn't you buy? What were the competitors doing better? Why did you believe this could or couldn't get these jobs done? Was this job even valuable to you? Were you seeing something that's, oh, that's interesting, but not actually useful? So you get that kind of information from them. But then you need to talk to people who have nothing to do with your product. They've never heard of you. Maybe they've vaguely heard of you, because you can also get locked into your view of the world. And that happens a lot, especially at earlier stage companies where everyone's kind of singing the same songbook right straight down from the founder. But the actual the early adopters versus people out in the world, they may be thinking about the problem completely differently. And you may find that, you thought your problem you're solving is huge and universal, but actually it's quite niche. So, getting that perspective from people who are not colored by your view of the world, people who are in the trenches evaluating and, poking holes in what you're saying, and then people who are using the product and love the product, that gives you a much more kind of well balanced view of what is the reality here. So I think focusing or over optimizing on one of those groups is a mistake that a lot of people make.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one. Definitely. I think when it comes to research, you just need to diversify where you're getting your information from, because it's very easy to just be in an echo chamber. Almost, confirmation bias starts to creep in where you have these assumptions and people are just like maybe telling you what you want to hear, which and it makes you feel like you're productive and maybe makes you feel good because your assumptions align with what you're hearing. But I think good research is actually going out there and sometimes hearing the hard truth, or having your assumptions broken down and changing your perception. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Almost every company I've joined, when I'm trying to come up to speed, first thing is you interview all the internal people, and that's super valuable. But then almost every single time when I've gotten out into the market, I've found, sometimes big and sometimes small discrepancies. Um, this one company I was at, they did AI based recruitment. So, finding really hard to place engineering talent. And the company had started going after CTOs, looking to hire engineers, kind of at startups. And they were just hitting a wall on, we've sold to, the reality was we've sold to all of these people. And, we've kind of hit a cliff on what we're doing. And so then, obviously this is a recruiting tool. So thinking about HR, I started going out and interviewing HR personas. And like, what was very fascinating there was the job to be done was kind of the same. It's finding hard to place talent, hard to find engineers, diamond in the rough candidates. But the way the people thought about it and the things that they valued were completely different. So you imagine a CTO, they want a rock star. It's very masculine. We like the bidding war. We want to bid over talent. We want top people in. Da, da, da. Then you're talking to some like 45-year-old woman in the Midwest who runs an HR department. That is so off-putting and like, what? We would never bid. They're human beings. And and they think about it totally different. So they cared about, is this a fair candidate experience? Is this, da, 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 da. So that we really had to take kind of come to terms with the fact that all of our messaging was designed for this one buyer. And we assumed, well, they're all doing the same thing, they're bringing on quality talent. But the way these two groups thought about it and how they were gold and skilled and like their values were completely different. So that was one of the more interesting findings I found, I think, just kind of doing the research.
Yeah, the nuance, right? Again, I think that's what creates eventually good messaging, is that nuance, like being specific to what the persona cares about rather than just being vague and generalizing. Like that's why we do it, right? Is to get those golden nuggets, those sort of aha moments when you interview someone and they say something in their own words and you're like, yeah, like that's it. That's the thing we need to talk about for sure. And you know, Chat GPT probably wouldn't get you there. Um, yeah, so I'm on board with that.
One thing I think's interesting about that, sorry, but when I don't know if you've run into this challenge, but say you go out and you do 10 jobs to be done interviews and you come back and you have this great hypothesis. And then you go to the C level and they're like, well, that's only 10 people. Or that's only like, I feel like one of the things I've run into is kind of pushback on that qualitative and thinking that, we need to survey 1,000 people for this to be right. And what I've found is, what you find across 10 to 15 people, 85% of that is going to be like you've nailed it, especially if a fair amount of them are saying the same thing. But sometimes I run into that. So what you can use it for too is you get your hypothesis and then, okay, we'll do a survey. We know the things that we think. Now we can go get some more quantitative information on that. I personally don't think that you really need that, but I feel like that's more about like stakeholder management. A lot of times I'll incorporate that just so that people can feel, okay, this isn't just Alex's 10 interviews she did. This is now, we've done a survey at 50 people and they more or less validated it. So I think that can be one thing if you're struggling to get buy-in that you can do to kind of, get it over the line. Sometimes you're surprised, but usually you're not.
Nice. Yeah, no, I like that. Sort of your adding your experience in there. Okay, so Do you want to share the website you wanted to walk through? It'd be good to show the viewers what this potentially looks like in practice.
Well, and I'll kind of give a little context to this because this was the first company I started thinking about jobs to be done versus personas. Um, and, I mean, a lot of times, okay, we sell to the VP of engineering. We can do a persona kind of template on that. We know, what their goals are, what they care about more or less, what they're trying to do. And it can be generic, you incorporate like the current climate, those kinds of things, as we said. Um, but I was working for a company and we sold marketing automation, which, very competitive space, but it wasn't to like B2B tech companies or companies where there's a marketer or CMO. It was marketing automation for small businesses. So small businesses, when you're looking at that, that could be someone who owns a flower shop and all they know are flowers. It could be a chef at a restaurant. It could be a franchise owner that's got 20 different franchises, an e-com site. So when you're looking at that group of people, it is so diverse. There isn't really any one way to make a persona template because it's all flavors. I think I mean, we had 180,000 customers at the time I left. So just, across that, it was, it's a huge audience and that's not even going global. So we had to kind of come up with a new framework for how to look at it. And it really was, okay, what are the jobs that you do with marketing automation, regardless of who you might be? Um, and then, through doing that and kind of uncovering that, the second layer that we layered on was trying to get, because when you're in that situation, you can't boil the ocean. You have to find some patterns. So we ended up kind of boiling it down to there's a few buckets of people trying to do these jobs, but oriented it around the kinds of businesses that they're working on. So I'll share what we ended up with to try and make some sense of it. So I'll share what we did at Active Campaign around that. So, we sold a platform solution, effortless email and marketing automation. This was because we learned that across all of our users, the reason they bought was ease. There's a million email marketing automation tools that you can use. If you're a certain kind of business, you want, flexibility, customization. But I mean, most of our businesses, this is small business, the single biggest thing that they cared about in life is marketing is not my full-time job. I don't care about marketing. I want to be a florist. I want to be a chef. I have to do this. This especially was during COVID when they, full digital transformation. So, I have to do this. It's a job. I don't want to do it. I'm not passionate about marketing the way, someone like myself might be. So really kind of leading with the ease of use was across the board. But then when we thought about who are our personas, rather than it being a title, it ended up being more of like a business type. So, we had small and medium business, we had what we call solopreneurs, and we had, your more typical enterprise buyers. And then we had people running franchises. And across all our interviews, we learned that, across those four categories, the hopes and dreams, what they're goaled on, what it means if they're successful or not successful, all of that was very different. And the functionality that they thought was really useful and cared the most, like the jobs to be done, were different. So we were able to bucket across a huge, diverse platform of users. Like I said, we had 180,000 global users. We were able to kind of bucket those groups into these business categories and kind of make that the persona. And then within each of the personas, catalog what are the most important things that they need to do. So you can kind of see that on the webpage where, for a small and medium business, the big thing was punch above your weight. We're a small company, we're strapped with resources. And then our website really actually featured flows that we thought were really critical, that our customers were telling us were the things that were the most important. What were their most used tool stacks? So when they're coming and they're like, I need to get going, what are they using today? Kind of highlighted some of our core values, but again, focusing on the flows and the jobs that they were actually using. And you can kind of see like, so, solopreneurs, I mean, you're one person, be as productive as a whole team. So walking through what is someone most likely going to be doing as a solopreneur. And then for enterprise, it was more of kind of like the traditional typical story. And then, franchise, same. Um, so, really we geared our whole site up towards talking to these audiences. Like the key and what we were able to do was really we understood at the customer level, what are the flows they're trying to accomplish? What are the jobs they're actually using it for? And then at the buyer level and more of the, I'll say like persona kind of psychographic level, what are these people? What is their daily in and out? What are they trying to do as a business? And we married those together. So the site ended up being, pretty effective. We were growing, I think, 60% month over month while I was there. So really kind of going after uh, what do you care about as a business type and a person that's responsible for this? And then what are the things you're using in the product that are getting the most value? And just going with that front and center to bring people in. Um, and, at the end of the day, it wasn't like we didn't have a marketing buyer. It was, kind of our own flavor of how to tell these stories.
All right, so that's it for this episode on the Jobs to Be Done framework. Wherever you're watching this video, there will be a link to Alex's resources on the page somewhere. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode.